The results of HBCU All-Star Games may still leave a little bit to be desired, but by no means should they stop anytime soon. Oh yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, I'm Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current site expert at Who Dat Dish and contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make it Locked On HBCU, your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We'll wrap up today's episode with our Monday mailbag. We're keeping it going. Remember, drop comments. I will respond. Try to collect some every Monday to have something to give back to you. In segment 2, Dawn Thornton, the Alabama A&M women's basketball coach, is way more than a coach. She is also a panelist at Essence Fest this past weekend. And we kick off today's episode with HBCU All-Star Games. I know I haven't heard much about them ending, but something I read this weekend sparked me to at least come out and advocate and explain why these are still valuable events. And I'm focusing on the HBCU Swingman Classic, which happens to be this Friday. So it was ironic. It was pretty poetic timing that I stumbled across this article I read. I'm talking about the HBCU All-Star Game, which technically is two events because you have the men's game and the women's game. And I'm specifically talking about the HBCU Legacy Bowl because that garners the most attention of the triumvirate of events. So when it comes to this, these must continue. And I think some people may look at these events and say they're not useful. I think some people may look at these events and say, what is the purpose? And that word right there is probably the driving force of today's article, or excuse me, of today's episode, of today's segment. Let me read to you this article that I just got from HBCU Legends, and it was about the challenges of HBCU basketball. I read it because I wanted to know what my guy Johnny Jones was talking about. And it's funny because the passage that I'm about to read to you, it doesn't connect to that as great as the rest of the article. So make sure you go check out my guy Kyle T. Mosley. Does a great job with HBCU Legends. But this is the part. It says, it's been more than a decade since an HBCU player, Kyle O'Quinn, in 2012, heard their name called in the NBA draft. Coach Jones noted that opportunities for discovery may have diminished despite Travis Williams' efforts to showcase HBCU basketball talent over the past 4 years at the HBCU All-Star Games. And it just got me and said, man, what if people are sitting here thinking, what's the point? Because that's a very reasonable thing to feel. We keep trying to showcase. And what are we actually getting from it? We're not getting more draftees. So it's easy to look at that and say it's a failure. I don't agree with it because I still think that the purpose is not being lost. The end goal, the hope, that's being lost. And those two things are so closely intertwined when speaking on this subject, but I do think that they're different. The purpose is to broadcast. The purpose is to give a platform. The purpose is to showcase. The hope is that showcase, that platform, that it turns into a draft spot for somebody. That is the end goal, but that is not the purpose of the event. At least it isn't to me. I think it's the inspiration behind the event. I think that it's the end goal, and it's probably the most important thing for many people when looking at that event. And I include myself in that. I'm not trying to sound like I don't care about players not getting drafted. It affects me. I think about it all the time when draft time rolls around. I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm expecting to not see any draftees and just allowing myself to be a little bit more, I don't want to say surprised, but, I guess surprised is the best way to say it. But I think that the HBCU Legacy Bowl specifically has had an impact. I've seen people's stock be raised at the HBCU Legacy Bowl. I can't speak so much for the Swingman Classic. It doesn't feel like the NBA is getting any closer to really putting HBCU athletes in, but maybe guys like Madlock who participate in these HBCU All-Star games getting into the summer league, maybe that's a result of the game. But for me, the Legacy Bowl is the thing. I know that Robert McDaniel saw his stock be raised from the HBCU Legacy Bowl. I know that for a fact. Now, here's the thing. When you're talking about the effectiveness of an All-Star game, of a Legacy Bowl, of a Swingman Classic, when you're looking at the effectiveness of all of these pre-draft games, we have to temper expectations because the reason they exist is because people have been skipping over HBCU athletes. And that doesn't just start on draft day or the multitude of draft days. It doesn't just start then. It starts with the seasons. It starts with watching the games. It starts with going to the practices. They aren't getting that treatment. Just because the HBCU Legacy Bowl exists, just because the Swingman Classic exists, just because the All-Star Game exists, does not mean that people are now starting to pay attention through the season, whatever months that exists for the sport. It doesn't mean that. You're still starting behind the 8 ball. And I can guarantee you it's going to be extremely difficult over the course of just 1 week to go from not really on a radar to being a draft pick. I doubt that you're going to go from not being on a radar to being a 3rd, 4th round pick. Guys like Jacoby Durant, guys like James Houston, guys like I was about to say Marquise Bell, but he ended up not getting drafted. But let's just stick with Durant. Joshua Williams, that's the name I was looking for. Guys like that, they tend to not go to the Legacy Bowl. That's just real. They tend to not. They tend to go to one of the big ones like the Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl because they're already on a radar. The problem is most of the people at the Legacy Bowl are trying to get on a radar. And they may succeed in that. But when you're trying to get on a radar and it's already January and the draft rolls around in April, it's way more difficult. It's already February. Like it's difficult to get from low on the priority list to even being a priority in the 7th round. So it is a start from behind. But for me, the purpose is broadcasting this. And honestly, HBCUs have always been unique. I'm talking about since the founding. They've always gone against the status quo, right? Like just the pure idea of needing a school for Black scholars goes against the status quo from that time. And you've seen some of these things on the athletic level, not at the same degree. I think that'd be disrespectful. But as far as just comparing, not going with the norm, the Celebration Bowl is separate, right? The HBCU Legacy Bowl, the Swingman Classic, the All-Star Game, they're not separate, but they are unique. You're not going to see a mid-major. You're not going to see a lot of mid-major All-Star games. The FCS doesn't have their own All-Star game, right? Like you're not going to see these things from baseball. This makes this unique. HBCUs step into this sphere or have kind of put themselves in this sphere, in this bubble of being by themselves. And I think that it's about culture to me. You're gonna hear me talk about culture in the next segment more heavily. But when it comes to making sure that we are hosting these games, and when it comes to making sure that we are putting on these games, as long as people are putting out money so that we can air the games, as long as sponsors are still behind it, we need to continue this. If for no other reason, then it is broadcasting these athletes. And it may not reach that end goal, but maybe you get the CFL. Maybe you have a team from overseas that sees what happens in this All-Star game. Maybe you're looking at a couple of minor leagues in the baseball world. You're looking at all these aspects that it may not be the MLB, the NBA, the NFL, but the goal is to play professionally. And there are a multitude of different routes in which that can happen. A multitude of different routes. So I wanted to just make sure that I highlighted that because I think it's important. And I'll take this quote real quick from that article. Travis Williams' efforts to showcase HBCU talent. That is the quote. The effort is not to get these guys drafted. That is the end hope. But the purpose of this whole thing is to showcase and give HBCU athletics another spotlight. And this is doing that, even if we don't have draftees yet. I can hope it happens eventually, but until it does, I still think that this is fulfilling some sort of purpose to amplify HBCU athletes and HBCU athletics. So we must keep these in, even though that the results haven't yielded. We haven't yielded the results that we desire. Now, as we push forward, I told you we're going to keep talking about culture. Dawn Thornton was at the Essence Fest as a panelist. It don't get more cultural than that. We'll break down her relation to fashion and why it means so much to not only who she is on the court, but who she is as a leader as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. And listen, if you have anywhere to go, I don't care where it is, and it needs tickets, Gametime is the place to go. If you're out here in the DFW area, the AMA area, you want to go out to Garland for the AEW weekly shows, Gametime. You want to go out to Globe Life for their All In, Gametime. It's simple. I'm thinking about whether or not I want to go. I'm not a huge AEW guy. I'm mostly a WWE guy, but hey, wrestling is wrestling. I just want to be in there for the vibe. So maybe I will go. If I do, I can guarantee you I will be on Gametime. But maybe I just want to go to a Rangers game and not just want to go to Globe Life for that. Or maybe you're in a different city and you just want to go to the ballet. You want to go to the theater. You want to go to a concert. You want to go to a comedy show. It doesn't have to be athletics. It's still on Gametime. If you need a ticket, it is there. If you haven't been to Gametime before, use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. When you download the app and create an account, you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out the Saint Squad show. It dropped early this morning. You haven't checked it out already, go check that out. We actually have a lot of squad shows on the Locked On network that are coming on. So whatever your favorite team or your city, you may be able to find that too. Me personally, y'all know what it is. Check out my guys, Ross, Lance, John, and Dilly. All right. As we keep rolling, I want to talk about Dawn Thornton at Essence Fest because this is the perfect example of HBCU culture because she is a sports coach, right? Like she is not a fashion coach. She's not sitting here teaching you how to do this, that, and the third and put together these fits. She is a sports coach. She leads the Alabama A&M Lady Bulldogs on the hardwood. That is what Dawn Thornton does. But to boil her down to that would be disrespectful. The same way I believe boiling down HBCU culture in athletics to just what they do on the field or what they do on the court would be disrespectful. There are so many other things that go into collegiate athletics, right? We can make this broad. Collegiate athletics is a culture more so than professional athletics is. I still think that professional athletics is a culture, but not every single team, I feel like, embodies that. You go through the schools, they have a culture of how they operate. I don't care if you want to go to the flavorless school or if you want to go to an HBCU. And by flavorless school, I do mean a specific section of schools. All right. Like you go to, there's certain PWIs that do have flavor, but, listen, I'm a football guy, so I was going to start naming them, but who cares? You get mad, you get mad. But when it comes to HBCU athletics, there's so much fanfare around it. There's so much spectacle around it. And when I look at Dawn Thornton, there's so much spectacle around with how she dresses, how she is, how she presents herself. You can tell every single thing that she does, she put that together. She orchestrates outfits. I put on clothes. I'll be honest with you. I put stuff on. She puts that on. Yeah, you fill in the blank if you want to, but she orchestrates outfits in a way that tells you that she is very intentional. And she had a couple of quotes going into Essence Fest about why fashion is so important to her. And you can tell what it actually means. It's not just garments. It's not just tops and bottoms. It's not just shoes and socks. It is really a statement when she steps on the court and she is dressed a certain kind of way. So this past weekend, Dawn Thornton was at Essence Fest, and she got off the stage much earlier than Lauryn Hill and Boyz II Men did. You know, they booked the mess out of Essence Fest this year. They had a lot of people. I don't think Boyz II Men was scheduled to go on until like 12. I don't think Lauryn Hill went on to like 2 a.m. So anyway, the point is, Dawn Thornton has always been known for her ability to dress. There's a reason she calls herself the diva coach. But this is what dressing means to her. She says, my style is definitely an extension of who I am. It's confident. intentional, and sometimes a little extra in the best way. That's how I coach too. I'm big on presence and energy, and your preparation is your separation. Confidence is not just taught, it's modeled, and I want them, talking about her players, I want them to always see that in me. And you hear it, confident, intentional, a little extra, right? Like, and I want to be careful when I speak about this, because one thing that's I want to be very clear is there's no criticism in the way that she dresses. I think she be fly. I think in all honesty, I think that what she does is very notable. It's very notable. You know, Dawn Thornton, oh yeah, she be dressing. I done had people say that about certain people. I haven't brought this up about Thornton specifically, but I've heard that, right? I'm talking about so-and-so. Oh, that's the person who be putting on these outfits. I think that Dawn Thornton is known for that in that same capacity. And that's what allows her to make it to Essence Fest. That's what allows her to make it to this BeautyCon panel, because of everything that she has done in fashion, showcasing her sense of fashion. And you'll see how she uses that as inspiration. You'll see how she uses that as a way to speak to her players and inspire and lead her players. When she says confidence is not just taught, it's modeled, I thought that that was one of the best quotes that I've heard in a long time. Confidence is not just taught, it's modeled. Because at the end of the day, I can tell you all of these things of how to be confident. I can show you all of these things, but you have to see an example. You have to witness me be confident, especially if we're talking about you're already in a leadership role, whether that's a coach, whether that's a parent. It's different. It's different when you have those type of relationships with who you are modeling after. People are looking up to you at all moments when you're in both of those roles. So this is another quote that Thornton had. She says, I want my players to know that it's okay to stand out, to take pride in how you show up, and to lead with confidence on and off the court. I want them to know they don't have to dim their light to lead. There is strength in owning who you are. If I can show up in a bold outfit and still handle business, it gives my players permission to bring their full selves into whatever space they walk into. That's one of those quotes that you're either going to grab or you're not. I will try to contextualize it and explain why this is so important, but I think that those who understand that quote are going to grab it immediately and don't need me to say anything. And I think most people who don't understand that quote probably still won't feel it after what I say, but I will try my best. I'm not a big fashion person, but one thing that I think about a lot is the concept of fashion in relation to professionalism. So when I read this quote, it was like, oh man, she's speaking to me. Because the truth is, you could take a generic set of colors, black, gray, khaki, navy, right? Like these are safe colors, and you can do great outfits with them. You can make some phenomenal outfits with those four colors. But sometimes, like for example, I love the color purple. If I step in an all purple Prince suit, with my back covered, of course, but like if I step in an all purple suit like I'm Prince, well, people might not even care to hear what's coming out of my mouth. They may just be like, oh, look at this dude in this loud suit. Now, for some, it'll get their attention and they'll want to pay attention. Before a lot of people, it's like they're going to get written off. However, Ryan Clark pops up in a purple suit. I can guarantee you people are going to listen to what he says. He's on ESPN. We've seen all of his suits. People aren't going to say that most people aren't going to say that it's too loud. They'll probably say that's just Ryan, and they'll go on about their business, but they'll listen to what he has to say. What the difference is between Ryan Clark and I, amongst a litany of things, is Ryan Clark has built up an equity with his audience. Ryan Clark has built up an equity with that company. He can show up in loud suits. But I think what Dawn Thornton is doing that is so important is saying you don't need to build that equity, at least not here. Let the equity build around you, because the idea of, okay, I need to show up in a certain way to be accepted is real. And Dawn Thornton is refuting that. And she's teaching her players to refute it as well. So I love this, man. I'm not a huge fashion guy, but in relation, like sometimes I want to wear loud colors. I'll be honest with you. I may not know how to put them together the best, but I'll be wanting to put on some loud colors. And every now and then I say, you know what? I'll do it. But I don't think that I do it enough. And I think that what Dawn Thornton is saying, do it as much as you want to. If you want to put on yellow, you want to put on a pink blazer, put on a pink blazer. If you want to step out with a two-tone jacket, step out in a two-tone jacket, because that is who you are. And I think when you step out the most comfortably, you become the most confident. And I think people tend to become the most accepting. It's not what everybody does. Everybody does not have the standing to be able to come in and present themselves the way that Dawn Thornton has. And not everybody has the confidence to say, screw the standing. I'm still going to show up in the way that Dawn Thornton has. I love that she's teaching her players to step out however they want to step out. Now I want to go ahead and close out today's episode with a couple of questions or a couple of comments from some of our viewers on our Monday mailbag as we continue with Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. 2 comments, well, technically 3, but I combined 1 because they came from the same person on the same episode. But you have 2 comments, and I want to first start off with our guy, 7795777. Jesus. Now, this is funny because I took a quote from you last week, but you dropped some good stuff. Let me go through his comment, and then I'm going to go through the history of the Celebration Bowl. He says, North Carolina A&T has 4 Celebration Bowl wins. Jackson State is going for 5. I've been telling everybody, J-State's about to go on a run like North Carolina A&T. Hashtag total domination. Hashtag the best. Let's go through the history. North Carolina A&T versus Alcorn. We're just going to read out the games. We're not even going to read the winners. A&T versus Alcorn. First ever. Now we're going to keep going up. Grambling versus North Carolina Central. A&T versus Grambling. A&T versus Alcorn. A&T versus Alcorn. South Carolina State versus Jackson State. North Carolina Central versus Jackson State. And FAMU versus Howard. Jackson State versus South Carolina State. Now, what you'll see in there is there's only a handful of teams that have made it multiple times, and Jackson State is among that group. Jackson State actually has three. They have 3 appearances, which is the most out of the SWAC. Grambling has 2. Alcorn has 3. They've tied for 3. But North Carolina A&T has been there 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and they've won all 4. Jackson State has been there 3 times and they're 1 and 2. This is very interesting. I was watching the Pivot podcast earlier today, and it was Draymond Green's episode where he talked about before Oklahoma City won the finals. He said, hey, if they don't win this year, I don't think they're going to win because getting there is so difficult. It's a very difficult process. Jackson State, to have a North Carolina A&T type run, would just have to make it 3 out of the next 5 years. Like, that's very difficult to do. And the reason I mentioned that not many people have been there multiple times, A&T, Grambling, and Alcorn at the beginning of this are the only ones to do that in rapid succession. But look at it. Look at South Carolina State. South Carolina State makes it, and then they end up, Buddy Pugh ends up leaving. They go get Chennis Berry. Now you get him back. North Carolina Central has been a dog. North Carolina Central has been a dog for the last 4 years. They have 1 Celebration Bowl appearance. Making it to this level is extremely difficult. It is extremely difficult. For Jackson State to do that is something that we would have to praise to a degree you wouldn't even understand. Like, you wouldn't even understand. I understand a lot of people get annoyed by Jackson State's fans because they're so loud, but they've been really good. They've been there twice without winning. They made it 1 time last year, and they won that one. I think it's going to be very difficult. I would never predict anybody to go on an A&T type run. I wouldn't. But Jackson State is great. The point in saying not a lot of people have done it is there's always somebody who pops up. That tends to not really be the case in the SWAC. Grambling and Alcorn were going back and forth with it. You look at FAMU had been around for a while Jackson State was hot. And that's it. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, Jackson State, FAMU, Jackson State. So the SWAC is a little different. I think the MEAC just has, those one, boom, boom. You popped up, had a seasons. The SWAC kind of they kind of build to theirs a little bit, I guess. But still, very difficult. Very, very difficult. If they do that, then this is going to be something that we need to talk about. All right. I just think it's difficult. I think Jackson State is the team to beat in the conference this year. But if somebody pops up and shocks me, it wouldn't shock me. Anyway, that was weird to say, but you get what I mean. Now, next one you get from Jared Lott, 6745. T-Jack is doing his big one at PV, and we love it. Texas Southern is also on the come up, and I think in the next few years, the West will only come through Texas. I'm going to assume you're a PV fan by the fact that you said we love it. I love it too, but I'm not a PV fan. I just think that I got to respect it. I don't love it. I respect it. But I respect you for showing Texas Southern some love too. That's real. That's real. There was a point when the West rolled through Louisiana. It wasn't that long ago, pre-COVID. 2013 to COVID, every year it was Southern and Grambling. And I think that the way we view those schools doesn't make that crazy. Southern being good at football, Grambling being good at football, that's understandable. PV has been in 2 of the last 4 SWAC championship games. They've won the SWAC West 2 out of the last 4 years. And I don't think that they're viewed that way. So if we go through a 7-year stretch where PV is winning 4 of the championships in the SWAC West specifically, because Southern wasn't doing a lot of getting out the championships, but they was winning the division. I think we'd be shocked. And when it comes to, I can't agree with you all the way because I'm not sold on my alma mater. I'm very sold on Coach Jackson. I'm very sold on what he's building at PV. It's just about when does it come to fruition. But as far as Texas Southern, I don't know. I can't co-sign them. Not quite. I think that they still have some more to do. I still want to see more out of Dishman. I still want to see more consistency from that school. I would love it. But the SWAC running out of Texas, I can't jump behind that one. But I appreciate you. I appreciate both of you. 779-577 and Jared Lott 6745. I appreciate y'all. Hopefully next Monday we get some more comments. We just did 2 this week. I want to try to get 3 next week. I want to try to get 3 a week, honestly. But maybe we can get some more comments in this week, and I'll have some things to roll with. But anyway, in the meantime, in between time, on Wednesday we'll be back. It's our superstar episode. Got comments or topics on Deshaun Jackson, Michael Vick, and Mo Williams. So it's our professional turn head coach conversation. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.